So I think that if teachers will think through that process of what makes a good activity and then put it in your back pocket, then that's going to help your remote classroom go smoother.
Mm-hmm. It's all about preparation and planning, which is the next thing we're going to talk about.
Right?
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So what about it?
Well, sorry, I thought somebody else was going to take it up. So
thanks for the setup. You now have nothing to say.
no, look, I can talk for a long time. So Brett was just talking about like your stream of activities. And I think this is also where a lot of teachers get discouraged, is because there's a lot stacked on top of you. You have to learn this new program, especially, I mean, no one was taught how to use technology in college. And if you were, please email us, teachbiggerinfo.com. I really want to know.
Actually, that's
what college
info.
that is.
It's info@teachbigger.com.
Oh, whatever. Okay, well, it's info@teachbigger.com.
Well, it does make a difference.
Email. He doesn't even use email. He's talking about me. Okay, yeah, all that stuff you're talking about me now. You don't know which way.
My point being is that online instruction takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of preparation.
Yeah.
Now, unless you're someone who like you're already fluent with computers, you're already fluent with like Canvas, you understand how to make videos, you understand how to upload it, you understand the terminology. The other, if you don't know that stuff, it can be a huge learning curve. And I think there's a lot of older teachers who are feeling like brand new teachers, like it's their first year teaching all over again, and that might be a little bit frustrating for them.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that's one of the big frustrations that we have, because for the most part, I think most teachers in a school district are going to not be new teachers, right? I mean, they're teachers that have been teaching for a while. They have their career, they have their job, they're moving forward. There's always going to be new teachers, but you're going to have a lot of folks that haven't done this. They haven't done this. And, if you're listening, wherever you are in the process, whether school's already started or you're just getting started or whatever, there is a learning curve. Like, even if you get technology, teaching remote, there's a learning curve. Like, you have to get really fluent and familiar with the way this platform works. And the thing is, there are so many platforms and so many different districts and schools across the nation have a different set of tools that we at Teach Bigger, we can't say this is what you do, because you may not be using the same platform we are. So all we can do is kind of guide you in a way of thinking to say like, hey, make sure, and this is what I would say, make sure that you dedicate some time to planning. Like, we have PLCs, and we get in groups and we talk about our content and we plan for weeks on end. It's going to take the same amount of time to do a remote lesson. It's going to be the same thing. You're just organizing it differently.
Mm-hmm. Hey, so we talk about like the way we give instruction a lot, and so I would suggest this if you're planning to do like face-to-face lesson, and you have a lot of things you're going to have to do, like practice, especially if you have to like toggle through screens and like do all that. Like, I would find a colleague that could say, hey, I have to do this. Can I walk through this with you?
Yes.
Like set up even like something like a Google Meet or a Zoom or whatever, just so you can talk through it and you can kind of know. It's like step 1, step 2, step 3. Like, okay, I have to make sure this tab is open, and then I'm going to share this screen here. And then I know I'm going to have to create a breakout room here. So I'm going to have to almost like find filler time and know how to do 2 things at one time. So it's not just like I'm sitting here for a while. And I think that'll help with the flow of things. So kids won't just be sitting there. So you have to practice the way you're going to give instruction. We had you going to say something?
I was, but I don't want to interrupt you.
Hold your breath. So we had our band banquet, right? Sorry, I've been screaming at kids. Our band banquet, and so that was all online. So we had about 150 kids, right? And then we had parents there too, and it was online, like at the end of last year, and we had awards to give, we had videos to show, we had like 5 different people that were going to talk at certain times. And so what we did the day before is like we went through and said, okay, we're like the presenters and teachers, like we practiced how we're gonna do it. So we're like, okay, now I'm gonna talk, and then I'm gonna share this screen here, and then I'm gonna pass it over to you, Pratt, and then Pratt, you're gonna do that. And then when he's doing that, then I'm gonna go to this screen and pull up this video, and then after you do that, then you'll send it back to me and say these words, and then I'm gonna know to whatever. And we did that for like 2 hours.
Yeah. Well,
so we know the flow, you know?
Well, I really like what you're saying. There's a really great book by Doug Lemov called Practice Perfect. And he brings up this to educators. He says, if you think of any professional in the world, like if you think of a professional athlete, a professional musician, a doctor, like anyone who is a professional, they practice their craft, right? How often do we as teachers practice delivery of instruction?
Yeah, we do it in real time.
Right. We just show up and we wing it, right? Like we show up and we wing it. And here's the thing. It's really difficult to wing remote instruction. Like if you have not gone through every little element of online instruction, something's going to catch you off guard. Because when you least expect it, it's going to happen.
You can't just be like, "Hey, Pratt, I need to go make these copies. Can you watch my class real quick?
Yeah.
Can you watch my Zoom class real quick? I gotta go make these copies."
Let me tell you something. If you go back and listen to season 1, we had an episode called Child Avoidance. If you haven't listened to that episode, I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to season 1 called Child Avoidance. And if you are a child avoider, remote learning is going to be the most difficult thing you've ever done, because if you disappear, there's nothing.
Yeah.
You're probably the teacher who has their camera off because
I know you're keeping the camera off.
Yeah, don't be that teacher. Don't be that teacher. So no, but I agree with you mostly. I think that is really important that we practice this. Like we have to. So if you,
it makes you feel better too. Like, it's like you're only nervous about things when it's the unknown. After you go through it, you know like what hiccups you have, what you can do better, and then you just present better, and it's better for everyone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm gonna put in this little plug in case you're interested. If you need some help with setting up like a Zoom breakout session or a Google Meet session or anything like that, if you'll check out our YouTube channel, Teach Bigger, the YouTube channel, we have some. Yeah, it's the Teach Bigger YouTube channel. So,
the Teach Bigger, the YouTube channel.
Yeah, the Teach Bigger, the YouTube channel.
It's just Teach Bigger, like
whatever. Because I was calling Okay, my apologies.
If you go on the line,
right? Because I was
the internet.
Okay, I was thinking the Teach Bigger podcast, and that's what came through my head. So it is the Teach Bigger, the YouTube channel, right? So, but if you check that out, we have some tutorial videos on, how to set up a breakout room and different things like that. So if you're interested, check that out, and we want to help you in any way we can. So a little shameless plug there. So anyways, moving on. So what else about preparation and planning?
Well, I wanted to say that, like, when it comes to time management, like, you have to dedicate and set a certain time for you to physically create whatever it is you're going to create. Now, when it comes to remote stuff, that might actually mean that you are not just creating it, and then you are probably creating it, and then you're uploading it to wherever. And I like to think of, like, if I was going to do a test or a quiz or something, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to recreate that for those specific students or whatever, because I try to make it custom to whatever it is that we're doing. And, of course I use what I think I already have or whatever. But point is that I have the equivalent of uploading to copying. So if I was face to face, I'm going to make that assignment and then I'm going to print it out, or I'm going to make that assignment and I'm going to upload it. And then I'm also going to have that time where I'm going to run through my next day. And I remember my first year teaching, and Pratt, you were there. It was me, you, and it was another teacher. And I was super nervous because it was still like the first week of school. And I was going through my day. I was like, okay, they're going to come in the band hall. And then what? Then what are they going to do? And you're like, well, Tyler, it's obvious. Like, they're going to go grab their instruments. I was like, of course they are, because we're in band and that's what we need in order to play our instrument. So I was like, so they're going to come in, they're going to sit down. I'm going to tell them announcements that apparently I already know about, and then they're going to get their instruments. Then what? And like, I just kept doing that over and over and over again. And I kept tracing it back to the very beginning to making sure that I knew exactly what we were going to do. And one of the teachers that came in was like, bro, stop. you're trying to make it perfect. You're not going to get perfect. And I remember thinking like, I'm not trying to make it perfect. I'm trying to account for every single minute that I'm about to teach. And right now, out of 45 minutes, I only have 30 minutes planned. And I'll never forget this, because they came in and said that, I stopped. And then the next day came in and I still only had 30 minutes planned. And I had about 10 to 12 minutes left over where I had nothing. And I was like, why did I stop? Why did I wasn't?
So you were thinking like that because you taught with us for so long, and then you went against the Pratt and Mosley way.
I went against the teach bigger way. And that, let me tell you what I did for those last 10 to whatever minutes?
Talked.
Stop talking. Stop. Sit down. Do this. I need this. Look, I don't want to make us put enrichments up, but I will. Like,
Did your voice actually was that how your voice sounded doing that?
No, I probably went all down deep and low to make myself sound real scary.
Right.
But that doesn't work either.
Well, the interesting thing that I will say about this is that in that situation, the teacher who told you that, I've seen their class, and that's exactly what happens to them. They don't have enough content either, and they don't successfully fill the learning time. So I think that you can't pass up on practice. It's important. And you know what? The longer you do it and the more you practice, the less you need that planning time. You know, like it's not like you were going to need to come in every single day and spend 45 minutes walking through a 45-minute class. I mean, after a while, you start to learn that flow. Yeah. But you've got to do what it takes to get you where you need to be.
You're right.
And I think there's a lot of teachers out there who are afraid to do that because they don't want to stay after the extra really 20, 30 minutes in order to do it. Like, I mean, if you just stayed after school for an extra 20 minutes every single day and just worked on whatever lesson, then it would probably work out a whole lot. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Do a little bit instead of all at once.
So how we convert this in the remote environment is this, like it might be a matter of you videotaping yourself doing your online instruction, or walking through with a colleague or a family member or something, a Zoom meeting. Like you actually physically do that, and then you get that feedback. Like that is an okay thing to do. There's nothing wrong with that. Like you don't have to feel like that you're an amateur because you're having to do that. In fact, that's going to make you a pro. Like that's what's going to make you good.
You know, I think whenever there was a saying as far as performance goes, like when anxiety is high, performance is low. I think when you walk through that, it lowers your anxiety, so you'll have a better chance of performance. You know.
Yeah. So. Like I'll share this little interjection. Like I do some work for College Board, and we were doing some remote learning things over this summer, and they had asked me to lead a virtual session with other teachers in Zoom, you know, and do breakout rooms and all this. And I had never done that before. And my anxiety level was so incredibly high. I almost wanted to just say, never mind, I'm not going to do this, because, you know, like you're doing this with fellow educators, you know, and it needs to be on point. It needs to be good. But what they had us do, we had a rehearsal session, and we had 4 weeks in a row where everyone who was presenting, we presented to each other online. And after that was over, I was like, okay, this is no big deal. I can do this, you know. But if we had not done that, I can tell you it would have been a hot mess. It would have been real bad. It would have been real bad. So I think as teachers, I mean, even though you're dealing with elementary school kids or you're dealing with middle school kids, it doesn't matter. Like you need to have the confidence in the technology that you're using so that you can get them the content. Look, we have to remember the goal is that the kids are learning and they're having a good experience. And a kid cannot have a good experience when you're having a bad experience. Like it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and I agree, like with what you were saying, Tyler, about time management. Like virtual instruction takes a little longer, I've found. It does. And
that's
especially
everyone's saying that it takes way more time because you have to, there's a lot more front loading you have to do to it.
Right. And especially if you're going to do some sort of like flipped instruction, like a video lesson or something like that. But I think what I'm finding is that doesn't mean it. I think the time you're having to put in, it is worth that in its effectiveness. So like, for example, like I created a video for my students to teach a concept, right? And so I decided to really do it from the edutainment style. So I went in and I said, how can I make this familiar to these middle school kids? So I did like a major YouTube style video, right? So I went in and I was like very dynamic, and I'm like, hey, what's up? And this and that. And, I added little clips of videos and movies and memes and all this other stuff. And it took me probably 6 hours to do a 2-minute video, right? But of everything that I did, of all the online content I've done, that video had the best retention rate and the kids understood the concept the most. Because after that, it took so long, I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do this next time. And I did kind of like a PowerPoint presentation and I just kind of went through. I mean, I was still engaging, but it wasn't the same. It didn't have all the, little pop culture references and things like that. And I noticed
Pageantry.
yeah. And I noticed that, first of all, not as many kids watched. And second of all, the concepts they didn't understand as well. And I think, and I even had kids once we got back face to face who said like, hey, I really liked how you did that one video and like it had the memes and stuff. So I think we have to really think about our student experience, and it's going to take time to create the content that's going to be effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So last thing, as we wrap up, what's on everybody's mind is assessment. Like, how do we do assessment in remote learning? How do we do assessment? Well, I think the first thing to remember is this, like, your summative assessment, it's going to be in a lot of cases dictated by your district, whether it's a CBA or a standardized test or something like that. Like, some of that's going to be determined by your district and by your campus. But I think as a teacher, one of the things that we really have to keep in the forefront of our mind in planning for remote learning is formative assessment. And we have to be thinking constantly about, how do I do checkpoints along the way to make sure that my kids are understanding, and so that I understand what they know, so that I can be effective in moving them forward. And so I think when you start to really focus on the formative assessment piece, and you really think about those quick checks of understanding where's a kid now, where do they need to be, I think that really helps us to build in activities that are engaging. So, for example, it might be as simple as doing some sort of quiz online, like a Google form or something like that. I mean, that's a quick way to get some good feedback. I know a lot of people are doing exit tickets or question of the day or things like that, just to get an idea of what kids are doing. What other things are you guys doing to get feedback and that formative assessment going?
Why don't you go first, Mosley?
Okay. Well, ours is, performance based. So we use an app called Flipgrid.
Yeah.
And they can record as many times as they want. Like we give them assignment to perform something or, song or something. They submit that via this code, and it's easy, it's good quality. And then we're able to give them feedback based on what we've seen. So we started using that in the spring. And we start off by just having them introduce themselves kind of by that, and then so everyone can see how the app works. And then, we started with like easy music assignments and things like that. It's easy on our end too. You create a grid, they call it. It's like a topic, and then you have a code that goes with the topic. Those kids, they can click the code or enter the code in, and it puts them in that certain grid. And they turn the assignments, and you can go through and see. I have mine separated in classes. So like, let's say like your top group, like my wind ensemble, I have a wind ensemble code and the assignment, give them the code. They turn their stuff in. I can see the wind ensemble assignment, everybody who's turned it in every class they had that. So, I was talked about earlier in the episode that I don't know how to use technology well by one of the younger people. But I mean, it's real simple. You can find it, click it.
So what that means is
it's worked.
What that means is if Mosley can do it, you can do it.
Exactly.
Anybody can do it. So yeah,
Exactly.
I think Flipgrid's a great way to do it. I know a lot of teachers are utilizing that. Also just
hold on. Let me say this.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Let me say just so kind of see where we were. I remember last year, at the beginning of last year, right? Our district introduced Flipgrid, right? And it's at the beginning, your teacher development, everything is new. They're like giving you all these things to use. And I was like, I'm not going to use this. Well, they even made they even made our department like record a video using Flipgrid, right? And as we were doing, I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. We're not going to use it. And so
use it
we didn't really learn it, but like at the end of the year, yeah, we started using it. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess we should have paid attention. But it is definitely helpful. And we've been doing a lot of assignments via Flipgrid. So
yeah. Well, and I do want to mention this. I love the way you said, like, you started small, like you had the kids introduce themselves so that the kids learn the app. They learn the technology, and then you move from there.
Well, one of the things that I do, and I didn't even realize that I did this until like we started trying to plan out this episode, is and I think it's because based off of my band background, is I just have a discussion with the kids. And it's really interesting because I can tell that they're not used to doing a discussion, like an open discussion. They're used to like a teacher lecturing and just telling them things because at first they were really quiet. Um, because I think that if they can have a intellectual conversation with me about the content
Mm-hmm.
and they can use the correct vocabulary,
Yep.
then chances are they probably understand the content pretty well.
Mhm.
And I'm starting to get more and more with this idea of vocabulary and having them talk about it. And I was even toward the end of my band directing. I was even starting getting more and more like that. Like when my drummers were starting to have musical conversations with me and percussion conversations about like the music or whatever, I was like, wow, these kids actually know what's going on. Like I had a sixth grader correct me on when I misquoted Buddy Rich, who's like one of the greatest drum set players of all time. I was like, oh, so you're starting to learn more than me. uh, but now that I'm in the media thing, I'll literally like hold up a computer and I'll take the front screen off or whatever, and I'll be like, okay, where's the processor? And then kids are like, it's under the fan. I'm like, okay, what's the fan called? And they're like, it's called the processor fan or the CPU fan or what. And then we'll go in depth, like, and I'll have them explain it to me.
Yeah.
And if there's a kid who explains it wrong, it's like there are other kids that are there who are like, well, that's not quite right, or like it should be like this, or like whatever. So then it shows me that one, if there's kids who understand it, two, if there's kids who don't understand it, the other kids who do catch it, and that even strengthens the fact that they must know what's going on because they're doing peer correction.
Yeah, so that's great. So I mean, ultimately having academic conversation, whether it's in breakout groups or a large group discussion or even, partner conversations, whatever it might be, that is a great way to do formative assessment. And what I love is, like, for example, in Zoom, when you do breakout rooms as a teacher, you can go into each room and listen to the conversation. So I can go in and just monitor that conversation and know, like, okay, group A gets it. They're having this great conversation. They're talking about these things. They're using the right vocabulary. They understand what we're talking about. So I'm on board with that. Obviously in the virtual environment, you can do live demos. Like a kid can teach something, a kid could perform something, a kid could show something that they've, whatever. I mean, it's like the ultimate show and tell. You know what I'm saying? So I think that whole thing there. I would also say this though. I think teachers in face-to-face often write. Like they let their kids write. I think that the power of writing is so powerful, and I don't think we should neglect it in the virtual environment. Now we have to be careful. There has to be a balance. You can't just always have your kids doing essays and writing things in the virtual environment, because that becomes very tedious and kids get burnt out. Right? They need the peer interaction.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just say they
Sorry,
need that
I didn't
peer.
mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. They need that peer interaction. They need that. So we have to balance that out, but we don't want to let go of the writing element, because kids need to write. They need to be able to write, and whenever they can write it in their own words and explain something, they've got it.
I mean,
Go ahead, Mosley.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead. I'll go after you.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'll yield to the young people.
Okay. So what I was going to say is that I think a lot of teachers and a lot of students, when you say the word write, it's like, well, yeah, I know, like, oh, I don't want to write. Like that means essays, that means papers. Like I'm a math class. How am I going to get that to do? And it's not about writing a paper. It's about expressing your ideas. It's about figuring out how to get whatever's in your head out on paper. And that could be just a sentence, that could just be a thought, that could just be whatever it is. And like using things like a Jamboard, or I think there's a whiteboard that's on Zoom, using those type of things where it's just like, hey, like I could post something and be like, hey, just explain to me what the processor is. Write a sentence. What is the processor? And now I know that they know what the processor is, but now I'm trying to get them to formulate their thoughts and to put it out there in terms of written word instead of just explaining it to me.
Well, I mean, what I was gonna say is, in my class too, like every class, in in person, I would always say, show me your writing utensil. Yeah, I don't say pencil. I just make it extra. I'm like, show me your writing utensil. And they all like take their, they do that and they show me. But this year I'm like, show me your canvas. And I just use that word because it's, they're like the online thing. No. An artist has something that they put their material on and their art on. It's like, your canvas is something that you write on. So I'm like, show me your writing utensil. And they're like, now show me your canvas. And they have to show me what they're writing on.
Yeah.
And then it's like, jot down something about this. I want you to jot down the date, and then either things that I say, something that triggers or whatever, something like putting your own words. So like they're starting to write things down. And I do the same thing with the online kids too. I'm like, show me your writing utensil. And they're like, and then the same thing, like they had to show me like what they're writing on. I said, because you're getting a lot of information and I know you're brilliant, but you can't remember it all. I said, look at mine. I said, look, see, this was just for your class, and they see everything that I've written down. I'm like, so you got to make sure to jot things down. And so I even asked them, hey, so Chris, what did you write down about blah, 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 blah? Mm-hmm. And they can go down and they can like tell me what they've formed into sentences and whatever, just some words.
See, and that's so powerful because you're holding them accountable. You're saying, show me what you wrote. And like one thing I often say is I'm like, okay, read to me what you wrote.
Oh, that's
that way I don't want to know your answer. I want you to read what you wrote.
Okay.
Because that makes a difference.
That's even more accountable. It's like,
exactly.
I can't put your paper in front of your face and tell me what you read.
Exactly. Right. Let me see it. Show me.
Yeah. So, I like that.
Okay. So last thought on assessment is this. I think an overlooked form of assessment is like games and contests. And I'm not necessarily talking about like online games, like education.
I thought you were gonna say Scantrons.
Well, Scantrons, but
it goes into a machine and it does all the teaching.
Oh no, we're all techie now, and so now you can just use your phone and it reads the Scantron and it grades it for you.
Wow.
Are you kidding?
Oh yeah, that's a thing, and it's really cool if you want to do Scantron tests. But okay, so
sorry.
Assessment, okay, games and contests. Yeah, maybe there's an appropriate time. Like I know a lot of our math friends, our science friends, like they have their online gaming platforms that are specifically for math and science, and those things are great. Absolutely use them and incorporate them into your remote classroom. But as a teacher, what kind of games and contests can you create that are unique to your remote class? So like, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I did this year was I have to teach the kids the musical alphabet, right? That's the foundation for reading music. And so I teach them the musical alphabet. And in my flipped instruction video, I said, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a contest this week, and we're going to see who can say the musical alphabet forwards and backwards the fastest. And so I do a demonstration, right? And so I say it forwards 3 times, backwards 3 times as fast as I can. I have a little timer on the screen. And then I think I did it in I think it was 3 seconds. 3.7 seconds or something like that. And then I'm like, okay, here's the contest. If you can beat me, then you win. I didn't give him a prize. You win, right? And you get to say you beat Mr. Pratt, and you have to video yourself saying it just like I did and show me your time when you're done. I had tons of kids participate, and every kid is like, I tried so many times. I was trying and trying. I can't beat your time. Right? So what happened was I had these kids actually practicing, but they thought they were playing a game. You know what I mean? And as a result, the content was really strong. They all understood that musical alphabet and the concept behind it. So that's an example. So we had that contest. But there's all kinds of things. I mean, you can send kids into breakout rooms and say, hey, I'm going to give you 15 minutes and you have to do X, Y, and Z. And then we're going to come back and then you're going to demonstrate what your group did. And, have some criteria, have a rubric, grade it, and say, this team gets this many points, whatever you need to do. So I think there's a lot of things that you can do, whether it's projects, whether it's using breakout rooms, whether it's, creating time limits and deadlines and things like that to make it exciting for kids. I know there is a fine line. You have to be careful because sometimes, I read on Twitter this week that there was a parent really upset because the math teacher is always timing their assignments and the kid gets super stressed out and can't even concentrate because they think they're going to get a bad grade because they can't do it in enough time, right? So I get there's a danger in that, but I'm not doing this as a grade in the grade book. I'm doing this for a checkpoint.
Fun.
For fun, to get their practice going. And that becomes formative assessment for me. It's not, I'm going to put this grade in the grade book. You know, it is, we're doing this, we're having fun. And as a teacher, I'm learning, okay, you're kind of struggling with this. I need to touch base with you. Or man, these kids have got it. They're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did something similar with that, with teaching kids to be able to read music faster on a piece of paper. They would go in, they would write the notes underneath the note names, and I had it all scheduled out. I think there was like 5 lines or 6 lines, and I timed it so that way you were supposed to do it in 4 minutes. But I told the kids that the time, like, I'm timing you so that way you know where you are. The goal is to complete it. Like, because that's what it was. Like, you had to complete it. Because I remember doing those mad minutes and stuff when I was in math, and I'm a strong person in math, and I could never do them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, like, that's so wrong that I did this mad minute and I only got halfway through it, so I got a 50. Like,
Right.
shouldn't I complete it? And I would tell them that you need to do this, because the big thing of it was that, like, okay, you completed it. Your time was 10 minutes. Now we need to get that down to 4. So now it becomes more of an assessment of, like, you can do this paper in 10 minutes. We need to get you down to 4 to 5 minutes. So that means that we need to do more practice in order to get there. So that way you can read music fluently, type of deal. And I had every single student be able to do it by the end of the first semester. So it became a game. It became a benchmark. It became a form of measurement. And the kids thought it was fun because then they were racing each other, kind of thing.
Right. And I think it's so important to remember, whether it's face-to-face instruction or remote, it's about the kids' learning journey. Like, they're on a journey of learning. Like, make it fun and make it real for them. So, all right. Anything else on that?
No.
I mean, I think we talked it. I think you taught it
covered
pretty
the
good.
gamut. Cover the gamut there.
Hopefully today, you know, our goal was to kind of give you an idea of like 4 major areas to really think about when setting up your remote learning. These aren't the only 4. You know, we talked about engagement. We talked about appropriate assignments. We talked about preparation and planning. We talked about assessment. There's a lot more that goes into remote learning, but hopefully if you kind of take these 4 major pillars and you really dive into them, it's going to make your planning go easier whenever you think about these things. One thing that we didn't really touch on, I think, is like a setup of your learning environment, and like the actual, you know, like, how do I set up my camera and what should it look like behind me, and all those kind of ins and outs of creating a good learning environment for your kids from your remote station. So I think let's maybe do a follow-up here in the next few episodes to really discuss that. I think that would probably be beneficial. If you have other thoughts and you're like, I wish you guys would talk more about this or that, maybe it's related to remote learning, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just something you're like, hey, we want you to cover this. We would love to hear some commentary about this. So if you'll email us at info@teachbigger.com, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to get your ideas. We want to make season 3 really real time, knowing the things that are going to really benefit teachers as we're moving through this transition back into learning.
Yeah, and don't forget to check out our YouTube. It's on the line.
Yes.
So we are, or I don't know if it's already posted by the time that this episode comes out, but there will be a video talking about Zoom and Google Meet and Google tutorials on how to do these breakout sessions and things of that nature. And there'll be some more tutorials on how to do some of the things that we are talking about on this podcast. And if there is something that you're struggling with, like, look, Pratt was the dean of digital coordinating and technology, God, whatever.
It was just the coordinator of digital learning. That's all.
Basically same thing, right?
Yeah.
And then now I'm the media teacher at my school, and I literally just built my computer.
Right. So between the two of us, we can at least help you get your computer to turn on.
Yeah. We can help you with whatever tech thing that you might have when it is related to your classroom.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks for listening today. We hope that you pulled some things away today. Again, reach out to us, follow us on Twitter, go to the YouTube channel, get as much information as you can.
Like, subscribe, share.
subscribe, yes.
All those things. And lastly, I would encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, whatever you listen to podcasts, whether it's on Apple, iTunes, Spotify. We're on a lot of different platforms. So, hey, go ahead and subscribe. That way, whenever we have a new episode come out, you get notified and you can keep up with everything that's going on in the world of education. So we will be back with you next time.